So those were the the early years,
Yeah.
the early childhood years. Is there anything else that stands out, sticks out? From that's roughly between the 50s and early-ish 60s.
The only thing, no, nothing that stands out, but I do think those experiences mold or framed our thinking, which is why we have the opinions and feelings and experiences, counter experiences, even with culture today.
And that's true because you're really the last generation of segregation
Hmm.
that lived and experienced segregation. I'm the generation, the first with integration,
Hmm.
right? By the time I went to school, schools were integrated, but it was the
Okay.
beginning of integration. You're still working your way through it, finding out, the busing. Because I remember when we lived in Buffalo, it just seemed like the longest bus ride to go to school. And I don't even know where I went, but I just remember it seemed like the longest day because I had to walk through the park. Pop-up gave me a knife, just so you guys know. He gave me a knife, to carry back then. That would probably get me arrested in school and everybody locked up in this day and age.
Sounds like my brother.
But yeah, no, Pop-Pop, my grandfather. Pop-Pop, yeah, Pop-Pop
okay.
gave me a little fold-up knife back then. He said, take it, put in your book bag, when you got to go to, park and all that good stuff. Because, it was
Somebody could
people
run
out
up on
there. It
you.
was dangerous. When I look back, I walked through this big park as a little kid to get to a bus stop to get on and ride clear across town. But that was part of that first wave of integration experience. But if there's nothing else that sticks out from those early childhood years, I think for what I like to do is kind of transition into those growing up years, and just whatever stories come to mind of what it felt like growing up in America. Roughly between again the late 50s, mid 60s ish. By about 65, you started getting into assassinations and our leaders leaving us at that time. So if you can just kind of package it. What was it like, growing up in a somewhat still segregated, transitioning, pretty radical time?
Well, I want to jump in because when you were raising the question, I went into a blank stare. For me, that was a tough time. Tough, traumatic time because everything that was going on violated what we were raised to, how we were raised, and it was culture shock.
Because number one, you were Northerners. You grew up in the North, and on top of it, you grew up in an urban environment. You were technically in a city, and you were in a city with other people that look like you.
Well, embarrassingly so. What I think my first encounter with negative encounter was with police. I saw some really bad things.
That's right, yeah.
And I think, so though I wasn't in the South, it was bad what I saw in the North. Interestingly, though, when we moved to the South, and we've spent half our lives in the South, so we're pretty mixed culturally. Some of the stuff I saw in the North was far more aggressive and far worse. Because it was hidden under the cloak of it didn't exist.
Right.
So it made it worse.
They kind of just, again, pinned it on the dirty South, right? The South is where all that behavior and all that is. However, what history really shows us is northern cities were not that far off as far as their
Just
treatment.
scratched
Right.
the surface, if even that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to chime in and chime back out. Just family order had a lot to do with what you encountered, or at least what I encountered. Him being my big brother, a lot of stuff that I could have encountered, I never had to. It was like Bunny was the lead goose. He was the windbreaker.
That's what happens with the oldest child.
They do the headbutt
Yeah.
against the wind.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna leave that thought there for a second.
Okay.